Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ameen Sidhick. I'm a second year PhD student at the South Asia Studies Department. So if you look at the title of my talk, Islamic Legal Practices under Calicut's Non-Islamic Rule, two aspects comes to your mind. What is Islamic legal practices and what is non-Islamic rule? So when I talk about Islamic legal practices, I'm talking about norms or institutions or writing practices that are centered around legal aspects. And this could be mosque, this could be literary legal writing practices, this could be jurisprudential text, and so forth. So before I go into the content of my talk, where is Calicut? So as you can see in the map, Calicut is in the southwestern part of the South Asian subcontinent, and it's one of the Indian Ocean littoral, and it's in the historical region of Malabar. So often I would use Malabar and Calicut interchangeably to mean the same. And you can also remember it is in 1498, here Vasco da Gama landed, very crucial aspect of our trade, of the talk. So my talk touches upon the Islamic Aid Framework by Marshall Hodgson. So when you look at South Asia or places outside the West Asia, where Islam or Muslims lived and had and practiced their religion, you can see that they lived and had cultural influences that were not in an Islamic, quote-unquote, Islamic state. So whether it was under the Mughal rule in North India or the numerous medieval Muslim states in modern Indonesia, the state was not Islamic in nature or under a caliph or following a Sharia law. Hodgson characterizes such a social and cultural milieu as Islamic aid, whereby separating it from the context of an Islamic rule, Islamic framework. Scholars of South Asia has been the most adherent users of framework, as I mentioned earlier. In South Asia, Muslims were not the majority or were not, even when Muslims were ruling, they were not under an Islamic rule. Nandini Chatterjee's book, Negotiating Mughal Law, effectively uses the Islamic Aid framework. The author portrays how institutions like qadis or Muslim judges functioned in a local setting that was not dictated based on Islamic jurisprudence or following Islamic legal traditions. I earlier mentioned where is Calicut, but why am I interested in Calicut other than the fact that I'm from there? Richard Eaton, the famous historian of South Asia, points out that the city was in the 15th century India's busiest port. It was even larger than Lisbon. Foreigners gathered here from all parts of the world, Gujarat, West Asia, Russia, Eastern Africa. Second, Calicut at no point in history had a Muslim rule, nor were the majority of the population Muslim. A fascinating legend on Calicut and Malabar that is important to the talk is the story of Chairman Perumal's conversion. So the short version of the story goes like, Chairman Perumal saw the prophet's miracle of moon splitting. He went to see the prophet, converted, and on the way back dies in Yemen. And before he dies, he said to his ministers to split his kingdom among the ministers, propagate Islam there, and even built a mosque. So this is one of the first mosques in South Asia. So the key question we are getting at is, how did Islamic legal institution find legitimacy and function in Calicut under a non-Muslim state? In answering this, I'm looking at two junctures or two periods of Calicut's history. One is between 12th and 14th century, and which was the early years of Islam in Calicut, and the other is when the Portuguese are arriving. It's the late 15th and the early 16th century. From the work of Sebastian Prange and Mahmoud Kudia, and from a lot of the Arabic sources of the period, Qissatu Shakrawati Farmat or Al-Biruni's travelogue, we know that the Yemeni Rasulid state patronaged the Muslim mosque in the region during the 12th and 13th century. Stipends were provided by the Yemeni state for Muslim missionary enterprises. The imam of the mosque and the preachers were all given such patronage. Muslim merchants of Malabar provided the Yemeni sultans with gifts. Friday sermons or the khutbah were given in the name of the Rasulid state. And while native Muslims called Mapilas existed, most of the Muslims in the region at that period of the time were Paradeshi Muslims or foreigners who were like Arab traders or from Eastern Africa. They settled near the coast and controlled most Muslim institutions of the time. Here one can see that the Muslim institutions functioned through Muslim financial support and were not interested in any state mechanisms or apparatus. Next, we cut to 2 centuries into late 15th century and early 16th century, bustling with trade, while a new mercantile enterprise has arrived, the Portuguese, who are going to be a crucial figure in shaping political and mercantile milieu of the region, at least for a century. From the many Arabic sources of the time and Portuguese records, we know that when Vasco da Gama arrived at Calicut, the Muslims of the region were very much prominent in economical and social terms. They occupied most of the trade in the port city and had close relation with the Zamorin, the ruler of the state, who was a non-Muslim state. Even though Muslims only occupied 10% of the population. How did this happen? We can see that the Zamorin provided patronage to the Muslim mosque. The role of a Qadi or the Muslim judge were legitimized by the Zamorin ruler. We can say Muslims who didn't go to the Friday prayer were punished. Islamic legal affairs were legitimized and given all support by the Zamorin state. And the Portuguese writer Barbosa, who accompanied Vasco da Gama in his journey, even cite, if the Portuguese has not arrived and disrupted the social functioning of Calicut, it would have become a Moorish or a Muslim state. A bit far-fetched, but you still can understand what the prominence of Muslims were at the time. What happened in 16th century indicates a refashioning of Muslims in Malabar as a natural subject of the non-Muslim state. Muslim writings of the period, Tuhfatul Mujahideen, Fathul Mubin, all talked about all talked and legitimized the life of Muslim living or Islamic living under a non-Muslim state. Fathul Muin, a Shafi'i legal jurisprudence from the 16th centuries, Malabar critiqued the many texts of jurisprudence from West Asia that questioned the ability to lead Islamic life under non-Islamic rule. Muslim texts from Malabar, in turn, positioned the Zamorin as a righteous ruler, and it is legitimate to even wage jihad for the protection of the Zamorin state, or even against the Portuguese in support for the state. Texts like Muin responded to the many questions that limited Muslim living outside the Arab world, which was crucial as by now, because most of the Muslims, or by this time, were living outside what was called the West Asia or the Arab lands. These texts circulated to regions like Egypt and Indonesia, shaping Islamic legal institutions and intellectual practices of the region. So what are the takeaways? Calicut and Malabar provides a history of Islamic living possible under non-Islamic rule, thereby blurring the boundaries between Islamic and Islamic aid framework. 16th century Malabar disrupts the notion of a one-way Muslim intellectual circulation from Islamic central lands to the peripheries. Calicut provides examples of how Muslims in Malabar responded, produced, and circulated to a wider Muslim landscape. Calicut emphasizes the role of traditional Muslim intellectuals in shaping local traditions as well as Muslim life in these regions, one which Islamic aid frameworks of cosmopolitanism and cultural amalgamations overlooked. Thank you. Thanks for listening to me.